So in 7.2, we're starting to talk about some more complicated spreadsheet formulas, sort of expanding our vocabulary of the things we can do in a spreadsheet, right? This software, this program that we have at our fingertips with this spreadsheet is much more dynamic than just adding and subtracting and averaging things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is fixing cells and referring to cells. And of course, you might remember from the last video that we have names of cells, right? Things like A1, it's named by column and then a row, right? Column A, row 1 is this cell right here, right? Column B, row 5 is this cell right here. You get the idea. And one of the things we like to do a lot of times in spreadsheets is repeat the same formula, right? So if I need the same formula over and over again, I can just drag and drop, right? I can drag and drop the formula across a row or a column. One of the things, so for example, right, if I wanted to maybe just add these three numbers up, right, I could just say sum B9 to D9, and then if I want to take the sum of every row here, I could do that. I could just take this little, you see this little square right here, I can click on it and my cursor changes and drag it as far as I need it to go, and you kind of see, right, that before you watch the formula up here, the formula adjusts logically to follow what I'm trying to do, right? It adjusts logically to say, well, I'm taking the sum of these three, so in this cell, this must be the sum of these three, and this cell is the sum of these three, and so on. The question that arises, though, is what if I need to keep one cell constant in my formula? So one cell constant in my formula. Well, we have a way to do this, and that's with fixing parts of a cell. So we have the $ symbol. So the $ in a spreadsheet, and here's kind of my definition, tells the spreadsheet how to treat the cell reference when the formula is being copied, geez, I can't spell, or moved around. And if we want to go into more detail here, we can say that a $ makes that part of the reference absolute. It will not change. Otherwise, we say that the reference is relative, which means that the spreadsheet will follow a logical pattern as it moves around. Moves, present tense. So, and that's what we saw over here, right? If I took my sum formula, and right now the spreadsheet looks at it and says, well, this cell adds up these three cells together. So if I drag it down one, logically, it must then add these three cells together, and then these three cells, and so on. I can fix two places. So I don't think there's a nice way for me to do this on here, but we're going to try. It's not going to look pretty, but we'll do what we can here. So I can fix two different places. I can do this. I'll do it in color so it sticks out. I have $A, $1, for example. So I could have dollar signs in two places. The first $, this is where it's going to get a little ugly. The first $, is going to fix the column. Back this up a little bit so I can like make an arrow or something. Right, he's going to fix the column. The second $, is going to fix the row. Right, so I'll explain in a minute what this means, but this first $ is going to say that no matter how I move my formula, it's always going to pull cells from column A. The second $ is going to say no matter how I move my formula, it's always going to pick cells from row 1. And that's kind of what we're getting at here. It's kind of the point of the whole thing. If you're using a formula that will not be copied, then you don't need to worry about this. But if you are, and you should, because copying formulas will save you a lot of time, then this is going to be helpful. So what is a relative cell reference? So relative cell reference is going to look like this. Say maybe I can just blow this up a little bit so you can, that didn't really help much. All right. So say I take this cell in B1 and I say it's going to take A1 and it's going to multiply by 10. It's going to take whatever I put here and multiply it by 10. Right? Just like I said before, if I take this handle and drag it all the way down, it's going to follow that logical pattern of taking the cell to the left of it and multiplying it by 10, just what you see here, right? B2 is A2 times 10. B3 is A3 times 10, and so on. No matter where I move it, even if I drag it out all like this, it's going to follow the same logical pattern. It's going to take, it's going to take the cell to the left and multiply it by 10. It's going to keep doing that. Take the cell to the left and multiply it by 10. Cell to the left and multiply it by 10, and so on. So that's a relative cell reference. It's going to say, well, relative in position to the cell I'm working in, this is how the formula is going to go. An absolute cell reference, so say I want to keep this cell exactly the same and I only want to work with that cell. Well, I can freeze that cell by freezing both the row and the column. And that's now going to say no matter where I place it, no matter where I place my formula, it's always going to take this cell because I've frozen both the row and the column. Sorry, the row 1 and the column A all over. And that's an absolute cell reference, right? No matter where I put it, it's absolutely stuck to that cell every time. These are particularly useful when I'm using both a relative and an absolute cell reference in a spreadsheet. And it's also good when you want to fix a constant throughout some sort of your process and then play with that constant if you were to say run a couple simulations or update something. I'll show you that later on. So I don't need to use both dollar signs at the same time, but this first example is going to. So this first example is going to talk about what happens when I want to use that constant. So I want to take the average of these grades, and they're weighted averages. So your quiz grade is going to get 20% of the average, your test grade 50%, your homework 30%. So your average is just, well, I'm going to take your quiz grade and it's going to get multiplied by 20%. And your test grade is going to get multiplied by 50%. And your homework grade is going to get multiplied by 30%. And I get your average. This is great. This is the formula that I want to use all over. So I should be able to just drag this down. Except I can't. Whoa, this doesn't make sense. Well, why? I have all of these relative references, right? This is going to say logically to the formula I've created. The spreadsheet says you take this cell, multiply it, or you take every cell, multiply it by the cell above, and add all those products together. So no matter where I go, even if it's down here, it's going to take all of those cells and multiply it by the row above. Well, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is take this row of cells, no matter which row it is, and always multiply it by that top row. So I need to fix these three cells. So I'm going to fix B8 and C8 and D8, and I do that by adding dollar signs so that way they don't move, right? I fixed the row and the column, so the cell's not moving anywhere. So this way, when I take the handle and I drag it down, if you follow the function bar up here, you notice that those three cells that I've put in dollar signs don't move at all. And the only thing that moves is relative to this row, right? So that way I can tell the spreadsheet to find this person's average, you want their grades multiplied by the constants you want. this average is their grades multiplied by the constants. What's great about this is I can play around with the constants without having to mess up or edit my average column, right? If I want to change quizzes to 25% and tests to 45%, I can, and the grades update accordingly. If I wanted to change this to 40 and this to 35, I can, and the grades update accordingly. So no matter how I choose to play with my scale, the grades update accordingly because they're always referring back to this row, which is super nice, super helpful. A case where you're going to want to fix a row or a column, but not both, is going to be like this exchange rate problem. So I want to find what like the price of an apple is in euros and pounds and Canadian dollars, and I've come up with these exchange rates here. All right, well, if I want to figure out the price in euros, I'm going to take the American price and multiply by the exchange rate. But I need to think. I always, for all of these, all three columns, I always want to pull from column B when I get my prices, when I pull my American prices. So I'm going to fix column B. I'm not going to fix the row because when I move down to the avocado row, I want the avocado's price. And if I move to the banana row, I want the banana price. But I always want to pick from the US dollars column. So I'm fixing column B by adding the dollar sign there. The other thing I'm going to fix to make this helpful is to say, well, anytime I pick a conversion rate, like an exchange rate, I want to pick that exchange rate from row 17. So I want to fix row 17 with the dollar sign before the row. So this says no matter where I move it, it's always going to pick from this row, right? This way, if I shift down, this cell reference isn't going to shift down too. So if we do this and carry it down, right, you see that row 17 is fixed, right? As I moved the formula down, that reference up at C17 didn't move with it like it did before. So to see the column freeze in action, if I just take this and copy it over this way, of course my units don't stay the same, so maybe I should change my labels just because I'm that way. All right, so if you notice now I've moved horizontally across the row, but I'm still always picking from column B. I'm picking from the appropriate column still. I'm not now converting euros to pounds. I'm always converting dollars to pounds, dollars to euros, dollars to Canadian dollars. So freezing rows and freezing cells can be really helpful, really important when I need a formula as simple as take my price and multiply it by the conversion rate. No matter where I go, take my price and multiply it by the conversion rate. I want to take a formula that is as simple as that and use it for the entire spreadsheet. I'm now able to, as long as I fix the things that I need to fix.